Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm going to be filming a recap and deep dive of episode 1 of 4 Minutes. My script for this video is 40 pages long and it does not even cover everything I'm going to say, so this might be a long one. Get a snack, get some water. I have a water right here with me. I have my script right over here. So if I keep looking over here, it's because I'm reading my script because I want to try and stay on topic. I wasn't going to make this video initially because I know I'm a little bit behind. Episode 2 is already out. I'm filming this on August 3rd. But I've just dove too deep into this. I'm too deep in the lore already. I'm way too interested. And this is what I love. This is the kind of thing I love to do. I love analyzing. I love deep dive discussions. I am obsessed. That's how I know I love a show, is that I want to just pick it apart into its most minute pieces and talk them to death. And not necessarily pick it apart in a bad way. It can be, sometimes it's a critique, sometimes it's not. I just love really diving into these things. Just a warning, this is not a video for the people who insist the wallpaper is just yellow or the door is just blue because it's blue. There is a reason for everything. I'm going to try and find out what it is. And if there's not a reason, I'm going to make up one because I'm obsessed with that kind of stuff. So if you aren't interested in a deep dive, if you aren't interested in a super deep analysis, this might not be the video for you. But if you love deep analysis, deep dives, looking into the symbolism of things, looking into the color analysis of why things are done a certain way, why the cinematography is done a certain way. That's what I'm going to be discussing today. I'm going to start with a recap of the episode and then get more into like the deep dive theory thing. There will be the timestamps in the video scroll. So if you've already seen the episode and you would like to just skip to the deep dive, you are more than welcome to. I do slip a little and discuss some deep dive stuff during the recap. I really tried not to, but I find it so difficult. So there might be some of my deep dive analyses you might miss if you do skip the recap, but I'm not going to blame you. But I also really wanted to do a recap because I know a lot of people haven't had the chance to see the episode yet. So I really wanted to include it. And I'm really going to be going, so like in some cases, like frame for frame, shot for shot, because the way the show is filmed, I think is very important to analyzing it and like what they want us to take from each scene. So I'm really going to get in the weeds in certain parts. There are certain sequences and scenes that I am a little more broad about because I don't think they quite matter as much. But there are certain sequences and scenes in this show that I think the order of the shots really matter. And when a voiceover is happening versus when a character is actually saying something on a screen, I think, like I said, I do think is very important in some scenes. So there will be scenes like the opening sequence that I'm really going to break down in a granular way. And there will be other scenes I'm a little more general about. And like I said, I do have a script, so I will be reading a lot. My script is as close as it can possibly be to me looking straight ahead without it actually being in the frame. So my head will be turning. The episode opens to a doctor rushing down a dark hallway before entering a room where a patient is experiencing a medical emergency. The patient is experiencing stiffness and a drop in blood pressure, which I believe is consistent with a cardiac event or a heart attack. We don't see who the patient is, which in my opinion means we already know the character, and the story doesn't want us to know yet that this is the person who is having a heart attack. They do a really good job to always hide the patient's face, either with the angle of the camera or they'll put like medical equipment in that spot, or a nurse will be standing there. So like we can't quite see from our perspective who the person is. Seemingly concurrently at the same time, we cut to Jess's character, who we know is named Time, but I'm going to call him Time throughout this. Time is running through a dark, creepy looking place, and he's clearly been injured. He's clutching his like stomach, abdomen area and like stumbling and clearly not doing well. He looks like, in my opinion, he was either stabbed or shot. I suppose the actual nature of the injury doesn't quite matter as much as the fact that he is injured. So these scenes of the hospital and these scenes of Time are like cut together in a way that you're supposed to understand that they're happening at the same time. It was very hard to get a good screenshot of these scenes, but I really did my best. I'm going to be adding some screenshots for context where I think it's important. So we keep cutting back and forth between the doctor trying to save this patient having a heart attack and Time running around this really sketchy, warehousey, empty area. Kind of at the same time, Time, that's kind of funny, collapses on the ground at the same time the patient starts like flatlining or coding. The patient's heart stops and the doctor begins chest compressions. And at the same time, say at the same time a lot, but that's going to happen a lot with this show. Concurrently, Time is confronted with a mysterious man who is seemingly the person who has already injured him because he's got a gun and he's pointing it at Time, who's laying on the ground. And then concurrently, again, the doctor uses shock paddles on the patient right as Time is shot again by the mysterious man. It's implied that Time dies as he slowly collapses back onto the ground, and his body and his muscles lose all their tension, like his head flops to the side, his face relaxes, and you just kind of like the electric shock of the paddles and the gunshot are concurrent. And again, I believe it's implied these are happening at the same time, and that is when they both die. Both of the characters die. This is also the scene that leads me to believe the patient is Great, aka Bible's character, because we do see a shot with his hair in it. His got some like medical equipment hiding his face because of the angle, but because of the hair, I truly do believe it is Great. Also, because who else would it be? And why would they bother hiding anybody else from us? Because the narrative is connecting the two of them already anyway, so why would it be anybody else? The mystery patient officially flatlines. The medical team stops life-saving measures. They quit chest compressions. They don't use the paddles again. We are very pointedly shown a clock, and the time reads 11 p.m. Like I said, it is implied that both Time and the mystery patient, aka Great, die at the same time at 11 p.m. Then we get the opening title card sequence, which is really just Great and Time standing far apart from each other, reaching for each other as they sort of dissolve, I guess, kind of become universe particles. I don't really know 100% what we're trying to achieve with that. I get the like existential artistic vibe. Dissolved was the word that I used when I wrote, which I actually quite like. It's almost like they're dissolving into light. I actually noticed now looking at it again, one of them is sort of dissolving more from the head and the other one dissolving much more from the torso like area, which is very interesting. Maybe like head and heart. Then the episode officially starts and we open on a panning shot to who we know is Great, aka Bible. I recognize that hair anywhere. This whole introductory sequence for Great is awesome. There's a huge deep dive on Tumblr about it that I absolutely adored. Tumblr has a lot of great info about this show if you want to go and check it out. There's so many deep dives. There's so many people with a lot of knowledge and information that it's so fascinating to just read all of the people's different ideas and breakdowns. Someone specifically broke down this whole introductory sequence, like frame by frame, and it is so fascinating. The cinematography of the entire episode is fantastic. They do such a good job keeping things visually engaging while also making sure the audience is looking where they want the audience to look. Our eyes as the audience are always directed to what they want us to be seeing, but I don't feel like I'm being led around like a child, or it's just like static shot, static shot, static shot. It's very dynamic, but it still is achieving the same thing as like a static shot, which means when they do use a super still static shot, it's very effective because they're not using them all the time. So they're really emphasizing importance when it's like one thing in a frame, look at this with your eyes, there's nothing else to even look at. That is done very rarely, usually in relation with time in this show, when they really want us to know what time it is, which is obviously very important considering the 4 minutes aspect of things. Being extremely creative and dynamic in the rest of the show means that these shots that they're really wanting us to only pay attention to one thing are extremely effective because they're so rare. And when they do happen, they don't just feel like, oh, this is like every other shot we're doing. It feels like they have broken their pattern and they are making this clear artistic choice to really emphasize this one thing. And it's amazing. It's so good. They did such a good job. I just filmed for 10 minutes and my microphone wasn't even on, so let's go back. So Great is woken up by his phone ringing. A friend is calling him and said, hey, you told me to wake you up. You were partying way too hard last night. We have a test today at 1 p.m. And if you miss another test, you're going to get kicked out of school. Great seemingly does not care. He's like, no, I'm too hungover. I don't want to come. But the friend manages to convince him to get up and come to the test. Clearly, we're learning he doesn't care about school. He's apathetic about a lot of things in this episode, which I think is kind of a key thing of this character. We're supposed to learn about him in the beginning And then over the course of even just episode 1, but I think over the whole show, that's going to start to change, and it's going to change potentially his future. And maybe there was some kind of incident to make him this apathetic. Maybe there was some kind of thing in his past. We don't really know. We don't really learn that in this episode. Or if maybe he's just like this because he was raised this way and that's just how he acts. I don't know. So anyway, Great gets up and we get to meet Akuma, Bible's actual pet cat, who is making his acting debut. I think Bible has mentioned before that his other cats are way more energetic and kind of wild, and Akuma is a little bit more calm. So I think that might be why Akuma got to be the star and not the other cats. Also, notice the circle clock in the background of this shot. It really draws your eye. It's the only thing in the entire apartment that is not a straight line. I think that's really cool because it really just snaps your eye straight to it, and it lets you know, like, hey, this is time. This is really important to the show. Also, circle of life, the cycle of time, reincarnation is a very common belief in Buddhism. So I think that's another kind of just symbol. We get even more visual reinforcement about time and really paying attention to it in this series because we get a solo shot of just the clock. Because the rest of the shots have been so dynamic prior to now, when we get this just really still, hey, here's a clock, it's in the center of the frame, look at the time, it really reinforces that to us as the audience that it's something super important. Please note, it is 11 a.m. Great gets ready and leaves for university and really takes care to show us that he lives on the 4th floor of his apartment building. He experiences some kind of medical distress in the elevator. He is clutching his chest. He appears breathless and dizzy. The camera and the editing really take care to show a super distorted view of the elevator, kind of putting the viewer in Great's experience and really showing us, like I said, he's disoriented, he's confused, he's not sure what's happening. He's clutching the back of the elevator and kind of bracing himself against it, almost like he can't even stand. Once the elevator reaches the bottom floor, he stumbles out and he's clutching his chest and he's breathing really hard. And he rhetorically asks to the sky, oh my gosh, why can't I breathe? Let's note that dizziness, chest pain, shortness of breath, and even fainting are symptoms of a heart attack. Stay tuned for further information. We get a very long sequence of Great getting his car out of a parking garage. It's one of those fancy conveyor belt parking garages. And then it flips his car around so he doesn't even have to back out. He can just drive straight out of the parking garage. And I guess this is kind of reinforcing to the viewer, yes, he's fabulously wealthy. He has a car conveyor belt that flips his car around. We also see on the car is a logo for Sriwat Cargo. Clearly very wealthy, very well off. Great drives off to university, and then we get a scene change. We are in Sriwat Cargo. There is a handsome young man in a suit walking down a hall, and we are meeting Korn. Korn is the son of Sriwat Cargo CEO Chanan. Please pardon my pronunciations. I am but a humble English speaker using my English phonetic pronunciation to say things. Korn thinks that he is meeting with his father about a client that he had just been speaking to, but Chanan tells him, no, it's not about your client. I want you to take over our investment department. Korn is confused, says, I didn't know we had an investment department. I've never even seen an investment department in our company, hierarchy chart. And he is, I believe, the manager of the entire logistics department. So he would know if they had an investment department. Jonan says, don't worry. Our investment department is very important. That's where we make most of our money, and you will learn very quickly and you will do super well. And I'm not worried. I know I can trust you to take care of this mysterious investment department. Korn is clearly confused, and I kind of got the impression that he didn't want to leave his position. It seems like maybe he really enjoys it or he's very good at it, but he doesn't argue. It's really in his body language and in his facial expression that he's kind of showing he's not sure, but he does it anyway. He does not argue with his father. He agrees to take the new position. But Korn is smiling as he's leaving the office, which kind of threw me off because his father isn't looking at him anymore. He doesn't really have to be putting on a face, so maybe he was happier than I thought to be getting this new position, but I was under the impression that he didn't kind of want it. I mean, maybe he's pleased, despite his confusion, to be getting more responsibility from his father. Maybe it was more of a mask in case his father happened to see his face or anyone saw him leaving his father's office. He wanted to present a good front. Maybe it's a combination of all those things. I don't know. In the hallway, Korn runs into his father's wife, who, according to the My Drama list, doesn't have a name. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Note I said his father's wife and not his mother. It's not totally obvious at first. I didn't quite catch it initially when I was at this scene watching it the first time, but Korn is not her son. I couldn't quite tell if Korn is supposed to be the child from a previous marriage or an affair baby or something like that. Obviously, he's legitimate. He's working at the company, but he still could have been like a child outside the marriage that Korn was just like, yeah, it's cool. You can come be my son. It's not super likely. It might be a previous marriage. I honestly don't really know. If it was ever explained, I missed it. Regardless, Korn is not his father's current wife's child. He calls her what is translated as ma'am, obviously showing they have a more distant relationship. She tells him that he'll do a good job at the investment department and that his father is counting on him. She's smiling. She seems pleasant, but it's clear that there's distance and tension between them. Then his wife goes into Chanan's office, her husband's office, and they chat. Chanan is worried about Korn taking the job, the new position of the mysterious investment department, but his wife reassures him. Then she says she'll just have Great take over Korn's old job managing the logistics department. I didn't think much of that at the time, but it is interesting that she's having Korn, the child who is not her son, move into this sketchy position that he didn't even know existed, thereby opening up the very shiny, prestigious, visible position of manager of the logistics department, now open for her own son. Chanan says, good luck getting Great to do anything related to the company as he barely ever even visits home. The wife is visibly upset by Chanan's comments, but leans back when he leans forward, so he does not see her face when it shows how upset she is. Clearly, Great's relationship with his parents is very strained. Korn seemingly has a better relationship with both of them, though he could just be doing his best to appease his father's wife and try to get his father's approval so he's not put in an awkward position. He's clearly just going along with whatever his father wants him to do and not really wanting to pursue anything independently. And maybe his dreams do align with what his father wants for him, but later in the episode, we will learn that might not be the case. So we flash to Great. He's driving down the road on his way to take his test. He is running late. The test is at 1 p.m., like it was said earlier. It is very prominently shown to us on the car dashboard that it is 12:39 p.m. And his friend calls him again, the same one who called him to wake him up earlier that morning. His name is Title, by the way. He calls him Tle. That's not really like a sound we just like have independently in English, the TLE. It's attached to in words, but it's not like an independent sound. So I'm not 100% sure how to say that like independently. Like, I'm just going to call him Title or Great's friend. Again, the limitations of my English phonetic ability. So Title calls him and says, oh my gosh, I forgot my calculator. Do you have your spare calculator with you that I can use for the test? Personally, I thought it was a little bit odd that Great is kind of established as a lackadaisical student who doesn't really care about school. So it's interesting to me that Title called and was like, hey, do you have your spare calculator? Implying A, he has a spare calculator, and B, that he always has it with him. But maybe he cares more than we know. I mean, I don't know. It seemed a little odd to me he would have a spare calculator. And then I was thinking also, it's college level math. It's probably an expensive calculator. But then I remembered, oh yeah, he has a car conveyor belt. So 2 calculators is probably nothing for him. And I wondered if this was kind of just for the plot, just for the friend to have a reason to call him, or if it's supposed to imply more about his character. Does he care more than we see? It is not entirely clear in this episode, but hopefully we learn. So Great pulls over, checks to see if he has his calculator. He doesn't. And we get a very obvious shot of the clock in the car. It is still 12:39 p.m. Great keeps driving and talking to his friend. He's clearly very distracted. He's very worried about being late. He's speeding down the road. He's not paying enough attention. He's glancing between the clock and the road. He's going way too fast, especially because he enters a tunnel and he's going very, very fast. We don't have a lot of tunnel driving where I live. There's not a lot of like enclosed driving. At least for me, I get very, very nervous when I do have to drive in those situations because I don't know. I'm very enclosed. And I stay in my lane anyway, but it just makes me way more nervous, especially because there's a lot of blind turns. So I tend to be more cautious of a driver in a tunnel. If it's something that's more common, maybe he'd be more comfortable. But the show is implying that he shouldn't have been driving this fast. His friend is saying, hey, can you stop and buy me a calculator on your way? And he's, of course, saying, like, when I don't have time, I'm already late, or I'm going to be late if I don't hurry. I don't have time to buy you a calculator. I'm so sorry. And he's like, again, frazzled, glancing at the road, glancing at the clock, talking to his friend. We are very prominently shown the time again. It is 4:43 p.m., 4 minutes since the last time we were shown the clock. He is, frantically looking back and forth, talking to his friend, distracted driving, and out of nowhere, he hit something or someone who seemingly came out of nowhere. He was distracted, certainly, but was he that distracted? I'm not going to show any screenshots or anything of the actual impact or the accident because they're honestly quite realistic looking and they really kind of freaked me out watching them back. I mean, I'm assuming they've just used like a prop dummy and it was just very effective for me personally. But just a warning, if you go and watch this episode, the actual impact looks quite realistic. Great gets out of his car, clearly horrified and distressed about what has happened. We see he's hit a woman. She is bleeding out on the ground. Instead of trying to help, Great runs back into his car, gets in, and starts driving away, speeding away. He's, again, clearly distressed about what's happened, but he's not going to do anything to help. Running away from his responsibilities in a moment where he should be taking ownership. Put a pin in that. Then, out of nowhere, the car stops, and Great's consciousness, it seems, kind of like flies out of his body and like above the scene. And he is like sucked backwards. Like the light is like zooming back through the tunnel, outside, back into the light. And then he's like dropped back into his car in the moment where it was stopped on the side of the road when he was checking for his calculator. He's freaking out, obviously. I would be too in that situation. And Title is on the phone again saying like, hey, did you check? Do you have your calculator? Did you check for it? Even though this has already all happened. And again, we are pointedly shown the time, 12:40 p.m. Even though it had just been 12:43 p.m. right before Great hit the woman. His car is totally undamaged and he is no longer in the tunnel. And obviously there is no woman who has been hit by a car. Great shakes it off admirably quickly, in my opinion, and starts driving again, back in the tunnel. He is driving much, much slower, much more carefully, paying much closer attention to the road. I also noticed this time he turns his car lights on when he enters the tunnel, which I don't believe he did the first time. At least I didn't notice. He's clearly shaken, but also kind of trying to just brush it off. Like, maybe I'm just too hungover. Maybe I'm too tired. Maybe I didn't eat enough this morning. Haven't had enough water. Crazy, but like, we're just going to shake it off. But he's definitely taken what he saw as an indicator that maybe he should be a little bit more careful. Then we notice this time they're showing us the tunnel wall kind of between the two lanes going opposite ways has big square holes cut into the wall every, 100 feet or so. And there is a woman standing in one of these holes and she's crying. She's crying very heavily, very, very distressed. And we recognize this is the woman that Great hit with his car. He wasn't just reckless and hit somebody that he should have seen. She clearly jumped in front of his car. Will this change things? Will Great's safer driving keep him from hitting her? Will she still jump? Yes. Very pointedly, things happen exactly as they did before. Almost exactly, which makes all the difference. Previously, the woman was dead by the time Great started driving away. He was going so fast, she died almost immediately. This time, he was driving much slower and much more carefully. And he jumps out of the car and immediately goes to help her. He's asking if she's okay. He's saying he's going to call an ambulance. However, the woman says she doesn't want any help. Don't call an ambulance. But Great ignores her, obviously, calls them. The ambulance picks her up, and the police also appear to question Great since he is the one who hit her. Even though it wasn't his fault, they don't know that yet. There is a scene change, and we are in a hospital. We meet a few new characters, notably some nurses and a doctor, Dr. Den. He seems like a goofy, cheerful guy. He is important to the plot, otherwise they wouldn't take the time to introduce him to us. The accident rolls in, and we finally officially meet Dr. Time. Very funny name, considering the premise of the show, and their names together make great time, which is absolutely hilarious to me. He is very handsome and looks very good in his scrubs and his doctor outfit. He is going to be the surgeon on the accident case, aka the woman that Great has hit. Her name is Mani. She was hit just 15 minutes prior, but is still alive, and they're hopefully going to be able to save her, which is 15 minutes longer than she lived in the original timeline. So just think, she never would have gone to the hospital. Time never would have been on her case. Great never would have had a reason to go to the hospital, which, sorry, spoiler, he does later in the episode. And that's when sorry again, spoiler, he'll meet Time. So in the original timeline, as far as we know, he and Time never would have met. Because of this one change, being more careful in this tunnel, deciding to jump out and help this woman, she still got hit. She was still in the accident, but it completely changes everything. It's kind of the catalyst for the story. Again, obviously, him having the cardiac event, which leads, I think, maybe to the visions, is the true catalyst. But this one change he decides to make dominoes and makes our story. Time and Den go into the woman's room. They're both on her case. They check out her condition and they decide to prep her for emergency surgery. They make a point to show us that Den tells Time the woman's condition and what's going on, but he still decides that he wants an abdominal ultrasound anyway. So he does one, and Den is like, but I already told you. And Time's like, just prep it. I'm doing one. So he's clearly got some control, maybe not issues. I'm not going to say issues because as a doctor, I'd rather he double check and make sure and, do what he needs to do as opposed to not and then missing something and then, people are hurt or worse. I couldn't quite catch if he saw something that was not in Den's original report. If that is the case, please let me know. But I do believe he just kind of saw what he was already told. Like I said, they decide to prep her for emergency surgery. The woman protests she has no money to pay for treatment. Time says, no problem. You're in an accident. It's an emergency. I can access emergency funds to pay. The woman reveals that she walked in front of the car on purpose. And Time asks, why would you do that? Mani's reply is simple. She doesn't want to live anymore. Time's response was, I hate to say funny considering the situation, but it kind of was. He says, basically the equivalent of too bad, so sad. You can die wherever you like, except in this hospital. Dr. Den intervenes, clearly more sympathetic, more emotional, more trying to connect with this woman, and asks if she has any family. She says she does, a son, but they're estranged. Den tries to appeal to her kind of connection to this family, saying like, hey, if you live, you can take this as a sign, try to reconcile with your son, reconnect. But if you choose not to get treated now, you're never going to have that chance. Time, meanwhile, as he hears this woman's story, he has a very peculiar look on his face. I couldn't quite decide what I thought he was feeling, but it's almost like something about this woman's revelation hit him in his empathy, kind of in a way that nothing has so far in the show. He's kind of been very cold and aloof, very classic surgeon stereotype, but this seems to have hit him in a way that nothing else has, like I said. Does this mean he has an estranged family? Or maybe he doesn't really have a family? I don't really know 100%, but they really took care to show us that whatever this woman is saying is impacting him a lot. Den convinces Mani to consent to treatment. Everyone preps for surgery. They're all scrubbed in. And we learn this is going to be Time's first surgery where he is kind of in charge as like a lead surgeon. So he's not a full surgeon yet. He is in training. So I'm not sure of the medical terminology. I think he might be a resident. I don't think he's an intern. I think he's like a surgery resident. I'm relying almost entirely on my Grey's Anatomy knowledge for this one. And BOC decided we're also going to go full Grey's Anatomy. And the surgery is kind of graphic. I'm not showing any screenshots. Way too graphic for me. If you're very sensitive to things like that, I would not watch this scene or kind of like just cover your eyes and read the subtitles at the bottom because it is quite gross. Surgery is a success, and Time's instructor says that he has improved a lot. After the surgery, when they're scrubbing out, the instructor says, hey, you are doing super well. After you finish your program, have you thought about what you want to do? And would you consider being an instructor here? Time says he wants to work in a private hospital. The doctor says he can do both. He can be an instructor and work in a private hospital, but Time says he is not interested in such a thing. Time fully scrubs out and he's walking down the hall, and then he bumps into Dr. Den, who is carrying a huge box of paperwork. Den asks about Mani, and Time pointedly does not know who he's talking about. The patient he just operated on. Time didn't remember her name. Dr. Time living up to the surgeon stereotype, which I think is a good juxtaposition between Time and Den, clearly showing Den is a much more caring doctor. I don't know if he's also a surgeon. He might not be a surgeon, which would make sense why he wasn't on the surgery. Because he's on the case, but he's not on the surgery. So I guess maybe he's not a surgeon. That just kind of occurred to me in the moment. That's not even in my script. To quickly change the subject, Time asks about the box. What's in the box? And Den does this whole, like, is it called kabedon, where you like slam against the wall and you have your like boo that you like against the wall? I think it's called kabedon. I don't know. Which was totally random to me. I'm like, why are you doing that? But anyway, he does the whole kabedon wall slam with Time and reveals that he is doing secret clinical research on heart attack patients. Not actually secret in the way that it's like unethical, but secret in that he like doesn't want to tell a lot of people because I think he's worried about his research being stolen or something. So maybe not secret as much as it's like quiet. Den is researching heart attack patients with a goal to be published in international medical journals, obviously. Then Time's girlfriend calls and Den leaves so they can talk. Time looks exactly 0% excited to talk to his girlfriend. We don't even hear any of their conversation, past Time saying hello and then walking out of the frame, which is highlighting her unimportance not only to Time, but to us as the audience. We don't need to care about her. They're making that abundantly clear. Now, I could be reading too much into this because they don't translate the contact name. I tried to translate it on like Papago, but it was kind of a little too blurry and it said like go cha-cha or something, which could actually be what it said and it could not be what it said. So as far as I know, it very easily could have been a joke. It could have been like, oh, your boss is calling. Oh, haha, your girlfriend's calling. You better answer, like implying that, oh, you really need to answer the phone call. Could have been his girlfriend. Could have been a family member. Could have been a bill collector. I don't really know because, again, they don't translate it. So it very easily could have been a joke that I totally missed because of the lack of translation. But I'm choosing to take it at face value and believe what Den said. Please let me know if I'm on the right track with this or if I'm completely off. Then we get another scene change and we are with Korn. He is on a little speedboat in a super sketchy warehouse area with like rivers between them and like big empty white buildings. Watching it back, it kind of looks like it could be the place where Time gets shot in the opening sequence. It's hard to tell because the scenes are so different. Like in the beginning, it's very dark. We don't see a ton of it. It's very tight on Time. And this scene is filmed in broad daylight and it's a lot more out. So we see a lot more of the like big area and then we see a lot more of like the background when the camera even is on Korn. But maybe it's the same place. I don't know. So Korn learns that the investment department is an illegal online gambling ring where the door locks from the outside. Not sketchy at all. Gambling is illegal in Thailand, barring very few exceptions. So this is obviously a big deal. I'm assuming that they're also doing all of this gambling with company funds, which is extra bad. We also learn the company owns 3 casinos on the border. On the border of where? I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't entirely matter. Casinos are also illegal in Thailand, so even more illegality. Korn is clearly going through it in this scene. Would have appreciated a heads up. His face almost is a mix of like scared, exasperated, annoyed, partially almost even disbelieving. Like he can't even believe what he's learning and seeing. But Daddy Dearest told him that this was his new job and he will not go against him, which just further solidifies that impression that Korn will do anything for his father, no matter if he agrees with it or not. He never even really has a moment of saying like, how are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Like, this is illegal. Like, are we not worried about getting caught? Which could be because he's kind of there in it, worried about maybe these people could do something to him while he's there, kind of entirely at their mercy, but also could just be because he isn't really going to care anyway, because like I said, his dad told him to do it, so he's going to do it. Korn goes into an office with one of the managers, and we get a lot of very important information very quickly. The camera makes sure we notice all of these things happening. The shareholder information is kept in a safe in that office, and the manager keeps the key to the safe on a necklace around his neck. It's very long. It like goes under his shirt and stuff. Like I said, we are very pointedly shown these things that here's the key. It's on the necklace. Here's the safe. It shows this. The safe is here. So obviously these things are going to become important at some point. We also meet this girl in this screenshot whose name, according to the My Drama list, is Non. She is one of the gamblers, and she also got a solo shot back when they were actually in the gambling room. They were kind of panning over all of the gamblers, and she got like a frame to herself where she's kind of like looking at Korn as he walks in and like noticing some things. She knocks on the door and is going to bring water into this meeting, seemingly entirely unprompted. The manager is like, who let you in here? You're not supposed to be in here. Grumble, grumble, grumble. She ends up saying sorry. She walks out. But clearly she is going to be important at some point in the show. Maybe she's an undercover cop. Maybe she is investigating this whole gambling ring. Maybe she wants to kind of like take the whole thing down from the top. Whatever her goal, she's clearly keeping a very close eye on what is going on here. Then we get another scene change. To be entirely upfront, this scene is extremely spicy. It is chili pepper vibes. So I really can't show a lot of screenshots of that because BOC requested on their Instagram that reviewers and reactors not share those scenes out of respect for the actors. And so I'm going to comply. I'm going to do my best to recap the scene and then get into my analysis of the scene after, because I do have a lot of thoughts. Again, I cannot entirely promise I will be able to accomplish that because I am a yapper extraordinaire, but I will try. This scene is a masterclass in the power of romance. I read a lot of romance novels, like just in my life, like, you know, Victorian era, people in fancy gowns on the cover, that kind of romance novel. I absolutely love them. And the intimate, spicy scenes aren't supposed to only be there to be intimate, spicy scenes. Every single scene in a book or in a show is supposed to do more than one thing at a time. So it's obviously showing, you know, the intimacy, but it's also supposed to either drive the character development forward, teach the audience something we didn't know before, or drive the plot forward. In this scene, we meet KornTonkla, who's dating Korn. We're going to get into that. We learned so much about both of them in this scene and their relationship with each other just through them having an intimate scene, which is just chef's kiss. That is exactly what these kinds of scenes are supposed to do. Like I said, we meet KornTonkla. He is so cute. From certain angles, he kind of reminds me of Hyunjin from Stray Kids. Let me know if I'm crazy or if you agree with me. He is working from home late into the night on the phone with a client, and then he's like, oh my gosh, life sucks. I'm having to stretch because I'm tired. He's clearly stressed, and he reaches for a cigarette case on his desk. Right about that same time, he hears somebody punching in his door code. Not knocking, not calling or texting to let them know they're there, straight up punching in the door code. But KornTonkla's not worried. He seems to know exactly who it is. Or perhaps there's only one person it could be. So he hears the door code and immediately hides his cigarette case, like between the pages of the magazine on his desk. Apparently, who could it be but Korn? Activate KornTonkla being very cute and bouncy and running over to him and like calling his name in kind of a much higher pitched voice than he was using on the phone, which I totally get. You're not going to necessarily talk to a business client in the same way you're going to talk to your boyfriend, but it's very interesting. KornTonkla's apartment is also probably the warmest set we've gotten so far in the show. There's a lot of golden light. Every other inside scene has been very cool toned and more like the lighting in the left half of the scene. I'll put a screenshot sort of by the desk. It's very cool. It's very blue-green. Whereas when we get over to the couple on the other side of the frame, it's very warm and very gold, but still quite shadowed. Almost like their reality is very kind of harsh and cold, whereas like the warm truth of who they are is still kind of in the shadows. So they're clearly dating or something. They hug, they kiss, but it's very chaste, it's very sweet. Korn goes and sits down on the couch. KornTonkla gets him a drink and then says he's going to go back to work. But Korn kind of like, you know, reels him in and says like, oh, you don't have to keep working. You work so hard. Like, don't I give you enough money? I can give you more. Which kind of led me to thinking like, is he a sugar baby? Or is he just like a really caring and rich boyfriend? Maybe both. I don't know. I get the impression they're actually in love. I don't really think it's a sugar baby situation. Again, I've only seen episode 1, but I don't know. They just don't give me that vibe. So KornTonkla sits with him and Korn unloads about his day. He tells KornTonkla almost the full truth of what is going on at his work, which I think just solidifies that they have, in my opinion, something very serious and real. He doesn't reveal the whole like illegal gambling thing, but he does say that he was transferred to a new important position that he didn't even know existed before and that he's nervous and stressed about doing well. KornTonkla listens and genuinely appears to care and worry about Korn. In my opinion, they have very genuine feelings for each other, whatever their label is, and whatever KornTonkla seems to be hiding. They're just so cute. It's painful. This whole scene is very golden. It's very warm. It's very intimate, except for the cool light that is right behind Korn. But like there is a yellow curtain almost trying to keep that cool light away. KornTonkla reassures Korn, even though he doesn't know the whole truth. And Korn tells him that the job is risky. KornTonkla reassures him very sweetly, and Korn says talking to him always makes him feel better. Then KornTonkla says he's not just good at talking. He initiates adult intimacy. Things progress, and KornTonkla says / asks if they can forego protection during their intimacy. Korn doesn't say anything, but retrieves the necessary protection and implements it into the situation. Tonkla looks sad, but doesn't say anything more. A moment of silence for this very, very pretty, very, very sad boy and his very pretty face. Intimacy occurs. They both enjoy themselves. I recommend diving into Tumblr again for this scene because so many people break it down so well and so interestingly. Afterwards, there are several lingering shots that show them just wanting to be together. They're hugging, they're just holding each other. They're just gripping each other like they can't even bear to be apart. It's very sweet, which again, I think solidifies that whatever their label might be, there are genuine feelings here. Korn is basically about to fall asleep when Tonkla attempts to initiate round 2. Is he always like this, or have they been apart for a while? Does he ever know when Korn's coming by, or how long he'll stay? Anyway, Korn gets a phone call from his dad. The call is to summon him home for dinner. Korn does not hesitate, immediately gets up, gets dressed, and says he'll be right there. And then he tells his father that he was just with Fasai. Fasai, again, pardon. According to the My Drama list, Fasai is a woman. Also, Fasai and Tonkla are not the same name. Fasai seems to be the daughter of somebody that his father knows. Korn hangs up and then says to Tonkla, "I'll see you next time," and leaves. Tonkla keeps up a brave face when Korn is looking, but when he looks away and leaves, his face is very, very sad, very heartbreaking, but still pretty. And then this next moment really threw me off. I would love to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments about this scene and what you think it means. There's a random moment where Tonkla hears a cat meow, jerks around, and sees a black cat like lurking in his living room. Thunder crashes. We see the shadow of the cat in the lightning bolt on the wall as it runs away. Very reminiscent of the show poster where Bible and Jess are sitting on the bed in the foreground, and on the back wall is their shadows. It just reminded me of that. Is the cat real? A hallucination? I truly don't know. I was very intrigued by this scene. Here's a little mini analysis of the scene because I can't even wait. We learned so much about Tonkla and Korn in this scene. Tonkla was not surprised when Korn just appeared at his house with no notice. He knew the door code and entered without knocking. But Tonkla knew it was him because he hid the cigarettes as soon as Korn came in, and we will learn in a future scene that Korn is very anti-smoking. So Tonkla didn't even suspect it would be anyone else, not family, not a friend. Does Tonkla even have anyone but Korn? He's also pointedly hiding something from Korn. On the surface, it's just his smoking, but I think it could be symbolic of something deeper that he's hiding. He's hiding a part of himself from the person he ostensibly loves. I saw theories that he could also be investigating the company and like the illegal gambling. He's kind of using Korn as an in to the company, maybe like an undercover cop, Interpol. I don't really know. It's definitely possible. I don't want to believe it. I think he's just so desperate for as much of Korn as he can get that he just doesn't want to waste time getting a lecture when they actually get to be together. I personally believe that they're secretly dating and it's not just like a sugar baby thing because they make sure to show us a lot of sweetness and tenderness between them. I mean, not to say that a sugar baby relationship is like all one thing all the time, but I don't know. It feels very just sweet and loving and just, I don't know, real, like a real relationship. They hug, they lay together, they talk about their problems, or Korn talks about his problems. Korn is content just to be with Tonkla. He isn't even the one that initiates either of their intimate moments. It's Tonkla both times. And I didn't think much about the protection conversation until I went on Tumblr after. Yes, it could just be face value. Tonkla loves Korn, wants to feel closer to him. And the show is sponsored by the protection brand. So they showed it in this scene. Or it could be that they use this product placement moment to show Tonkla's insecure about his relationship, especially considering that he's clearly a secret and this woman, Fasai, is in the picture. Does Tonkla think or know that Korn is also being intimate with Fasai while he's being intimate with Tonkla? Or is he just worried and suspicious? Is it all of that wrapped together, genuine desire to be closer and a test of if Korn is faithful? Or does Korn not trust Tonkla as being faithful? Or is it all of these things combined in some way? My opinion is Korn at least seems to trust and love Tonkla. I don't think he'd think that Tonkla was unfaithful or they would have shown more tension from Korn's side. Most of the tension in the scene is coming from Tonkla, not from Korn. Korn seems extremely relaxed in Tonkla's presence until his father calls. And then there's Fasai. It's basically confirming that Tonkla is just a dirty little secret and Korn's family doesn't know about him, When Korn leaves, he just says, see you next time. Not see you soon, not see you next week. They don't try to plan a day to see each other again. Just next time. TonKla is clearly desperate to get as much from Korn as he can when they're together because he clearly has no idea when he'll see him again or even how long they'll have together when he does see him. They don't even make it to TonKla's bedroom, which is his most private and intimate place. They stay entirely out in the living room, which is a room designed for public view. It's more your public face. Korn is only seeing the side of TonKla that TonKla allows him to, even if he desperately wants more. I am assuming that Korn's family has no idea he likes men, and I suppose wouldn't entirely approve. And since he's so entrenched in the family business, he has a lot to lose if his family turns against him. He's also clearly got a chip on his shoulder about his place in the family and not being like the full child of the two married people. He's only his father's child. And then there's the cat. I already said most of my thoughts on this, but I really am curious about what you guys think. After the cat runs off, TonKla seems almost scared. He's breathing really heavy, where before he'd been very, very relaxed. And then he looks around almost like frantic before he kind of collapses back onto his couch. I am very invested in the two of them, and I'm just so excited to see where they're going to go. Scene change, we get confirmation that Great and Korn are related in this family photo. Clearly half brothers. I think it's a very interesting color gradient choice in this photo, kind of going from Great in all white to the mom in gray to the dad in black with a splash of white and Korn in all black. Will Korn at some point submit entirely to the darkness? He doesn't even have a splash of white on his outfit. Anyway, awkward family dinner time. Great is the last to appear at the meal. His place is set initially by Korn, his half-brother, which he pointedly goes to the plate, picks it up, and walks it all the way to the other end of the table. So he's directly opposing his father's position at the table, both at opposite heads. We do not know why this animosity is here, but it very obviously is. No one stops him or even says anything. The dad just looks disapproving and the mom looks worried. Korn does not say a word. A maid simply gets Great's silverware, brings it to his new place, and sets it down. Is it common behavior, or is this family just allergic to talking about things? Maybe a bit of both, but my money is more on this is normal behavior for Great. And he sits at the head of the table alone, surrounded by the bars on the wall, almost like he's in a prison of his own making, as he fiddles with his lighter. The dad begins speaking and says he cleared it up with the police and it's good she didn't die. So clearly he took care of the fact that Great hit Monty with his car. Eventually, I'm sure an investigation would have exonerated him anyway, since she is very openly telling everybody who will listen that she jumped in front of the car, but now it's nothing to worry about. Rich boy privilege. We don't have to think about it anymore. I am curious if he ever made it to his test, but we don't ever find out. Hopefully he gets an extension for extenuating circumstances if he didn't. The dad is very hard on Great, asking when he'll stop screwing around and forcing his father to clean up his messes. Great doesn't even bother to defend himself, saying it wasn't his fault. He just stares at his hands. He's thinking about the weirdness around the time of the accident, how he went back in time, the weirdness with the clock. His family tells him to take a flower basket to Monty at the hospital and take a photo. Great pushes back, asking why on earth would I need to take a photo, but his mom insists. So she can't come back later and say their family didn't care, the mom says. So no one can say that we aren't taking responsibility. PR mom enters the chat. Great doesn't say anything more. He and Korn are very similar in submission to their parents, but also very different. Whereas Korn does it from a place of legitimately wanting to prove himself to their father and maybe rise above his station, I don't know, as like a half son. He seems to have a chip on his shoulder about his mom. Great only seems to do it to avoid having to talk to his family more, so he can just do whatever he wants anyway. Korn does what his parents want to please them. Great does what they want sometimes, just to avoid drama. Great still has his own place outside the family home, seemingly with no interest to go into the family business. They eat and then scene change. Great is being dropped off at his apartment. There is a brief moment where he gets out of the car, he looks at his watch, and he's shocked. He says, how is it already 11 p.m.? He waves down the driver to, I don't know, check the time with the driver. And the window rolls down, and surprise, it's Korn having come and dropped off Great. Great checks Korn's watch, and it's the right time, like 7:15 or something, I don't remember. This also shows that Great and Korn have a good relationship. They speak kindly to each other. They use those like familiar, family-friendly pronouns with each other. And Great is comfortable just grabbing Korn's arm to check his watch, and Korn is super comfortable just totally letting him. Great says he's fine when Korn asks, but Korn is clearly not convinced by this lackluster answer, so he parks the car and goes and walks over to where Great is sitting on the curb trying to smoke a cigarette. This is where we learn about Korn's anti-smoking bias. He walks up on Great trying to smoke the cigarette, and he snatches it out of Great's hands, he throws it on the ground, and he smashes it with his boot. They kind of like razz back and forth about it. Korn seems way more disapproving than Great is concerned about his disapproval. Great then checks his phone. It is 7:13 p.m., but his watch had said 11. Korn asks what's going on, and Great opens with saying the clock on his phone has been weird all day. He also tells Korn about the accident and how he, in his words, saw the future that he would hit someone. To him, it didn't happen, and then he went back in time. In his opinion, it never really happened, but he saw it as a potential future. From his perspective, at least, Great describes it as a vision of seeing the future and then getting the chance to change it. And this really further solidifies their good relationship to me, that Great trusted Korn enough to tell him what he thinks actually happened, and that Korn doesn't immediately dismiss him. He seems genuinely concerned about Great and does at some point ask if Great is doing illegal substances, which honestly I think is kind of a valid question considering Great's lifestyle choices and personality and what he just told Korn that he thinks happened, which is not a normal thing somebody would believe. But Korn ends up telling Great that he should take better care of himself. He was probably tired and feeling run down. And Great doesn't 100% seem to agree, but just kind of lets it go, puts it aside for the moment, almost like he wishes he could believe it was true, because it would certainly make things easier. Korn then apologizes for not spending as much time with Great lately. There's genuine concern and affection between them, and it's very sweet. Korn wants Great to take life a little more seriously. Great laughs and says, Korn sounds like their dad, and they kind of make fun of the mom and dad together. Great then asks if Korn misses his mom. Korn says yes, but it was a long time ago. I took this to mean that his mom died. The majority of the internet doesn't agree. We'll get into that later. Great teases Korn about it being a long time ago because he's old, and Korn jokes they're only a few years apart in age. The conversation ends with some more teasing about smoking. Korn takes all of Great's cigarettes. He's trying to light another one. It's, a little sibling squabble, very cute, very sweet. It's also really refreshing to see a half-sibling relationship in a drama like this portrayed like this. Like they actually love each other, they feel like they're siblings, and they want to take care of each other. It would be so easy for them to be enemies, but they're not. Another scene change, and we see Time arrive at his home late at night. Very normal looking house, but obviously a family home, very warm and golden and inviting, unlike Great's apartment or his own family's home. It's a bit of a shocking place for Time to live, in my opinion, almost at odds with the man that we've come to know over the course of this episode. Then we meet Time's grandma, and we really get to see his human side for the first time. This isn't the cold, skilled surgeon, master of the OR. This is just Time, a man who dearly loves his grandmother. Over dinner, we learn that Granny is diabetic and forgetful about her medicine, and she isn't taking her health as seriously as Time wants her to. She even has a diabetic sore on her foot that isn't healing, and Time jokingly says he's going to have her foot amputated. Granny rolls with it, says, good, I need to lose some weight anyway. They joke back and forth. Notice how different this shot is from Great's family dinner. The room is small and intimate, but fine for the two of them. They sit as close as possible, total opposite of Great, at the opposite end of the table from his family, laughing and joking and looking at each other while having personal conversations. And though their family is unconventional, a grandmother and a grandson, not, mom and dad, whatever, they clearly have the love and happiness that a family is supposed to have. Great's family, on the other hand, looks picture perfect on the outside, with mom and dad and 2.4 kids, but they have deeply flawed relationships with each other. Granny's diabetes is hard for her to manage because she sells desserts for her money and has to taste them to make sure that they're right. So it's a struggle for her. Time says he's going to become a full-time surgeon soon and work in a private hospital so they will have enough money and she won't have to work anymore. The granny looks kind of sad at this declaration and tells Time she just wants him to be happy. He says he won't argue about it anymore because it's bad for her blood pressure, and the overall conversation has kind of a serious undercurrent, but is still very warm and lighthearted and clearly loving. From this point on, I'm going to get even more granular into the scene specifics and the camera and the stage direction. I think they're extremely important as we're visually connecting things that are happening in the story, so please bear with me. After the Time and Granny family dinner, the scene changes again to Great waking up from a nightmare of the first time that he hit Monty, the time when she died and he ran away. The camera spins in such a way that her body and arm look like the hands of a clock, in my opinion. When Great wakes up, the camera is tilted to create an uneasy feeling. And the shot is centered on the end of the bed, not on Great's face, which is what the human eye expects and likes to see. It kind of puts the audience off balance, which is probably also how Great feels. The scene cuts to Dr. Den. He is interviewing heart attack patients. The scenes of the patients are cut with the scenes of Great waking up from his nightmare, kind of connecting him to these experiences. So I want to transcribe exactly what they said so I can kind of connect it back to Great. As I'm saying what the patients are saying, kind of remember what has been happening to Great throughout this episode and what is going to happen still before the end. The first patient is a man who says, "At the time, I didn't feel anything. Everything was black. I didn't see or hear anything. The next thing I knew, I woke up in the ICU. I was intubated already." The second was a woman. She says, "I saw a bright light from above, heard medical instruments around me, and then I felt like I floated to the ceiling. When I looked back down, I saw myself on the operating table." We cut back to Great leaving his apartment. He doesn't take the elevator this time. The third patient is an older woman who says, "I felt like I fell into a temple or a market, but the people there were all wearing white." We cut to Great walking clockwise down a spiral staircase. The third patient continues that the white outfits looked like Brahmin nun outfits, not nurse outfits. I couldn't find a good photo of a Brahmin nun outfit, but I'm assuming nun outfit, long dress type thing. Den asks if the woman is religious, and she says yes. Great arrives at the hospital to give flowers to Mani. Of course, her room is on the fourth floor. The flowers are white, which are actually more funerary in Western culture, but don't seem to carry the same connotation in Thai culture. A quick Google search told me that funeral flowers in Thailand are usually made of paper, so real white flowers aren't going to be associated with funerals in that same way. White is more associated with purity as well as longing, love, good wishes, and loyalty to family. Apparently, white flowers are a popular Mother's Day gift. Put a pin in that. Great wonders why this elevator ride didn't affect him like the one at his house the other day. He notes the clock at the nurse's station when asking for Mani's room. It is 1:30 p.m. or 13:10 with the way they do time. Of course, Mani is in room 4. Great gets there. The time says 13:11, 1:11. Mani is awake. They say hello. It's a bit awkward, obviously. Great leaves the flowers on a table by the door and then pulls out his phone to take the requested photo that his mom wanted. But he ends up kind of grimacing, deciding not to take the photo. He puts his phone away. He turns to leave, feeling very awkward, but Mani asks him to wait. The time is 13:12. Mani calls him what is translated into English as sweetie, which is very cute, since Great probably hasn't had a gentle motherly presence in his life in a while. She asks how old Great is. He says he's 21. She says that's around her own son's age. And she continues to say that Great is a young man with a bright future and that he should not worry about her situation and her actions causing him any trouble. She is going to tell the police that she jumped in front of his car and that none of it was his fault. Great is very overwhelmed with emotion and rushes out of her room. The clock reads 1:13, 13:13. Or if you add it together, 4, 4, 1 plus 3, 1 plus 3. As he's leaving the room, trying to get out, he is checking his phone and walking, and he bumps into somebody. Who could it be but Dr. Time? Time drops a bunch of papers, and Great rushes out without even offering to help him pick them up. Time shouts after him, "Don't you know how to say sorry?" But he doesn't turn around. Right as Time shouts and Great hits the doorway, he freezes, and the floor goes dark, kind of flashing bright and dark, and he drops his phone. The time? 13:14, 1:14. 4 minutes since he got to the nurse's station. I also think it's super interesting that right as Time shouted and Great hit the doorway is when he froze, because doorways are obviously very symbolic of, change, moving between kind of new to old, old to new, all of that kind of stuff. So as he stopped in the doorway, his chest starts to hurt and his heart starts to pound in his ears. He closes his eyes, and when he opens them again, he's back at the front desk with the basket of flowers. Almost like when the man said, "I didn't even know what was happening. I just opened my eyes and I was in a hospital bed." I don't know, just saying. It is again 13:10, 1:10, and he hasn't gone in to see Mani yet. Great kind of freaks out, leaves the flowers on the desk for an employee to give to Mani. He turns to leave and sees Dr. Time walking down the hall. At the same time, he has several visions in a row of them engaging in adult fun time together. I will not show the flashes here again as requested by BOC, but check them out if you want to. Right after those flashes, Great looks very surprised. Is he gay? Bi? Does he know that yet? Does he think he's straight and then just have visions of himself and this guy and he's having a crisis in the hallway? We don't really know. The scene changes quickly to another patient entering Den's room to be interviewed. She's pointedly carrying this net bag, which the camera takes care to show us. It is the first thing we see when she enters the room before the camera pans up to her face. I can't really tell what's in the bag either. It kind of looks like a brick, maybe some kind of opaque container to actually like hold her stuff in the bag. I don't know if this is some kind of bag that is symbolic in Thai culture, if it's just a bag, if it's supposed to kind of mean something that I don't really understand. If that's the case, please let me know. If I'm way overthinking it, please let me know. This patient gives very different vibes from the other patients. They seem to be struggling a lot to relive what they've been through, almost like they really don't want to talk about it. This woman, she's smiling the entire time. I would categorize it almost like she looks like she knows Den. She's smiling at him like she knows him and immediately asks to be called by her first name with no honorifics. To be frank, I got the vibe that she had a crush on him, but it's clear they've never met. So why is she looking at him like that? Den also seemed kind of put off by the way that she's acting, which lets the audience know that it's not normal or expected. When you watch the scene, it's pretty clear, in my opinion, that he's uncomfortable. He also compromises and decides to call her KornTonkla, which is her first name as opposed to her last name, clearly kind of trying to keep some professional distance. But Lukwa is not deterred by this. Her smile doesn't falter. Den is obviously uncomfortable, and as he begins asking questions, he starts kind of like scratching his ear and kind of scratching his neck, trying to deflect Lukwa's attention away from his face. In going back to watch again, I suppose this could be interpreted as him thinking she's cute. She's very pretty and kind of being uncomfortable in that sense. Like he's uncomfortable thinking this patient he's interviewing is very beautiful. In my opinion, my impression is that he's just not sure why she's acting so weird and he's kind of freaked out. But I did want to put that out there because that is a possible interpretation and I'm just misinterpreting it. Den keeps the conversation moving and asks how it felt when her heart stopped. And then we flash back to Great. He's still freaking out in the hospital hallway. Time walks by and into a room off the hall, the same room that in the previous timeline he walked out of and bumped into Great. Lukwa is voice over the scene saying, I don't know what happened to me. Great walks to the door and peeks into the room at Time. Lukwa continues, I just lived my life normally, but it was my life in the past. Like the events of the past were playing again in my mind. Great sees Time following up with a surgery patient, kind of shakes his head, walks a few steps away, leans against a wall, almost like he's just trying to gather himself, trying to like talk himself out of what he's seen and just kind of like move on. Dr. Den asks, did it feel real? Very real, Lukwa says. But there was one thing that didn't feel real. Great shakes his head, clearly trying to dismiss what he saw between Time and himself. He pushes off the wall, presumably to finally leave this hospital. Lukwa says, I could see 4 minutes into the future. Of course, as we know by now, Great can't change what happens when he goes back in time. He can only change how he reacts to it. So he still bumps into Time and the papers go flying. But as he's done before, Great takes the chance to change his own actions. Instead of just walking away, he kneels down to help Time pick up the papers. Their eyes lock amidst the rain of paperwork, and they both freeze. I thought this was just the usual like Thai drama freeze frame, like the lovers lock eyes thing. And that could definitely be part of it. They're our main couple, they're the romantic leads, but all the papers are still falling around them, kind of showing that time hasn't stopped. They're just kind of sitting there staring at each other. And then that, my friends, is the end of the episode. And I think it's very interesting that they connected Lukwa with kind of what Great is going through. So she's saying while she was dying of the heart attack, she went back in time and was reliving her past, except that she could see into the future. So that kind of answers a question I'm going to get into later in the analysis. I just kind of put that together literally right now. So far, I am obsessed. Episode 1 was so amazing. The cinematography, the music, the acting, the script, the plot. It is stunning so far. It all fits together really, really well. All the story pieces. I love how they're editing it together, everything. I love how the director chose to like weave certain parts together, like linking characters that we know and their drama with outside people that they may not know and they might not necessarily ever meet, like the patients talking about what they've been through, weaving together with Great in the hospital, kind of letting us know that he is experiencing something similar to what these people are. I'm going to try so hard to be cohesive and linear, but this section is just a lot of word vomit, and I am extremely sorry. Numbers 4 and 11 are featured very heavily throughout the episode. Time and who I believe to be Great both die in the opening sequence at 11 p.m. Great wakes up in his intro sequence at 11 a.m. He visits Mani in the hospital at 1:11 or 13:11. 1 plus 3 is 4, and then 11. So we get 4:11. 4 is a number associated with death in China specifically, but also a lot of Asian cultures more broadly. It's pretty common for buildings in certain parts of Asia not to have a fourth floor at all. Kind of like how in certain places in America, especially like in the South or very old cities, they'll skip the 13th floor. Do we all remember Great lives on the fourth floor of his building? 11 is also very important in numerology. Being upfront, I'm not super familiar with numerology beyond my Google research for this video, so please correct me or add context in the comments if I'm wrong or if I'm missing something. But from my Googling, 11 is a master number in numerology. It carries a heightened level of spiritual significance and a unique vibration. It's like a cosmic door that opens to spiritual awareness and inner wisdom. It's also apparently a strong manifesting number. Great's elevator being orange also seems like a very pointed choice. Orange can symbolize many things, but in this case, I really think it's linked to spirituality, and spiritual connection is the most relevant. It's also linked to enthusiasm and youthfulness, as well as arrogance, pride, and impatience. The Great we meet in the beginning of the episode could definitely be characterized as some of those things, and the positive aspects of Orange could be there to juxtapose his personality. He's young, only 21, but he's clearly got a lot going on beyond his years. He's apathetic and numb to most things and doesn't have much enthusiasm or zest for life. Orange is also an auspicious color in Buddhism, I believe. Buddhist monks wear orange, and the orange flowers, I think marigolds are what they are often used for a lot of like the TV show blessing ceremonies and stuff. Hence I did my little orange today. I don't actually know if you can see it, but it is there. Speaking of color, there's also a lot of black and white. Time is a doctor, so he's obviously got the white coat thing going on, but black scrubs were a choice that the show didn't have to make. The scrubs could have been any color, but Time wears mostly black. And Great wears mostly white, which I find extremely interesting. Obviously, Great wears black pants most of the time, but I think every single shirt he wears in the episode is white. He's a student, of course, so he's limited when he goes to university, but even outside of those scenes, he still is exclusively wearing white if he's wearing a shirt. White obviously is linked to purity, but I think we can clearly understand that's not what the white means in Great's context, at least in my opinion. Binge drinking, the smoking, the apathy, rich party boy doesn't really scream purity to me. White also symbolizes emptiness, hollowness, devoid of life and color. The best example of this is the stormtroopers in Star Wars. Their suits are white. And I think that is kind of more of what we're leaning into with the white. Time wears black. The obvious context is evil and darkness and death, which could partially be true since he's a doctor. His job is to save lives, but obviously it's impossible to save everyone. But black also symbolizes elegance, wealth, restraint, and power. Maybe not so much the elegance and wealth for Time specifically, but I think the restraint and power could be kind of more why that color is being associated with him. Also, it could symbolize that he's hiding something and trying to hide his true self in shadow. Except the one scene where Time goes home and hangs out with his grandma, and in the surgery scene where he's in like the surgical scrubs, he's also wearing at least some white. And Great is always wearing black pants. So they're almost always both wearing black and white. This visually links them throughout the story, of course, but I also think it may connect with like the yin and yang. They balance each other, or they will. Maybe. It's just a theory. Also, Lukwa, that fourth patient that is being interviewed about her heart attack experience, is wearing a black and white striped dress, which also visually connects her to Time and Great. I also want to talk about the shot of Great's bedroom where we see the bird's eye view. Everything is cool toned, black and white, and has straight lines, except Great himself lying angled across the bed. Like he's desperately trying to hold his life together by having a perfectly organized and coordinated world, but he's the one thing that he can't control. He's the aberration. He's the only splash of warm color in the space, even though he's dressed in cool gray. We see the matching shirt is tossed aside his bed, like he wanted to try to force himself to fit into the mold he'd created, but he just couldn't quite bear it. Then there's the geometric rug, a random, out of place, very jarring thing. It's not centered, it's not plain like everything else. It's the only pattern in the space. One off kilter thing to keep the viewer unsettled, even if we can't quite pinpoint why. Something isn't right in Great's perfect world. Maybe it's Great himself. Maybe there's something else. Maybe it's both. There are also parallels between the hospital room and Great's bedroom. This feeds into the prevailing theory online that the opening sequence of who I believe to be Great in the hospital and time like running around in that weird place is the end of the show, their story, or a version of their story. Their story where Great can't see the future, so he doesn't help Monty and they never meet. Some people think Great's weird moment in his apartment elevator at the beginning was him having a heart attack, which triggers his powers. Or as he's dying in the hospital, he gets to go back in time without realizing it and try to change things. Either way, his moment in the elevator, be it a heart attack or future him kind of coming back, prompts his powers and lets him potentially change his fate. I think this is also connected with what Lukwa said about how she was dying and reliving her past, except that she could see into the future. I think that that is what is happening to Great as well. I also think it's very pointed that Time shouted after him in that end scene, like, don't you know how to say sorry? And then he kind of freezes and goes back again. He's kind of getting the chance to relive moments where he wasn't taking responsibility and accountability for his actions, where he was running away from things that he should have been confronting. And because of this, he's getting the chance to do it again. He gets the chance to help Money. He gets the chance to go back and help Time and apologize, which will lead to them meeting, which again will be the catalyst for their relationship. It's not like he gets to control when he go back. It's not like he gets to go back whenever he wants. It's prompted by these very specific moments and circumstances. Basically, it's giving him the chance, like I said, to take accountability for his actions. Is this going to let Great change his fate? Is he going to end up back in that hospital bed anyway? We'll have to see. I was also kicking around some thoughts about how like Great is really being associated a lot with fire. He's got his lighter all the time. That's not super heavily done in this episode, but he's constantly got that lighter, which is that fire association. And Korn is being very heavily associated with water. When he goes to that gambling island, he's on the water. When he goes to Tonkla's apartment, it's raining. I'm not super fleshing that out at the moment, but it's kind of an association that I'm kicking around in my mind. Let me know if you have any thoughts about that. And then there's another big theory. A lot of people think that Mani is Korn's mother. I did not agree at first because I assumed that the mother was dead. But in the course of making this video and doing research into things, I think I might agree now. We learned from Korn and Great's conversation that Korn is only a few years older than Great. And in the hospital, Mani says Great is around her son's age. Speaking of the hospital, let's remember the flowers that Great gave her. A white flower basket. Like I said, in Thailand, white flowers are an extremely popular Mother's Day gift. And of course, Great wasn't meaning it that way. Great has his own mother, but it's a visual connection the audience might be able to piece together. Also, why would she be so important to the story if she wasn't somehow connected? She fits the age and our missing puzzle piece of Korn's mother. And when Korn referred to what happened to his mother, he just said it. So we don't know what it could be. Like it could be anything could have happened. What's your theory on that? Do you agree? I'm also very curious about Non, the suspicious gambler girl, and how she's going to fit into the story. It seems like she's going to be very important. And with Tongkla, I really don't want him to be like bad. I already love him so much after just one episode. Like, and yes, he's obviously hiding something. Like the narrative has made that very clear, but he could be hiding a lot of things, okay? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be that he's a spy. I'm also very intrigued by Korn's storyline because it's really setting him up from the start to eventually have to decide between pleasing his father and actually living the life he wants. The story has set Great, in my opinion, on the other side of Korn pleasing his father, along with Tongkla. So he can choose to either please his father or he can choose the people in his life that he loves. So Korn choosing his father would be abandoning those things and people that he actually loves, his brother and Tonkla. I don't know if that's how it'll play out, but that's kind of what it seems like it's gearing up to start. I wonder if Korn will ever hit that breaking point, or if he'll follow his father's wishes to the end. Will he take the fall for the gambling thing? Is that's what being set up? Is the mom setting up Korn to take the fall for the gambling so the dad and Gray and her can kind of like get out scot-free? Or is she just happy that he's there just in case anything happens so her son won't get dragged into anything? That's what's being teed up in my opinion, but it's only episode 1. Korn has time to change over the course of a narrative arc. That is the end of my script. Those are my thoughts. I tried so hard to kind of keep things linear. I don't really know if I succeeded, especially in the deep dive analysis portion. I'm very sorry if things were confusing. Again, this is what I love to do. This is what I love about watching TV and shows like this, especially when they're super well done. And this one is expertly done. It really makes me want to watch Manor of Death because I believe the author also wrote Manor of Death and I haven't seen it yet. So it is making me even more intrigued to finally go and watch it. Please let me know what you thought about this video in the comments and about all my theories. I would love to hear from you guys. I love talking about this stuff so much. And please like and subscribe and share this video with a friend if you enjoyed it. Let me know if you want me to do this for episode 2 as well. And I guess maybe for the rest of the series. I would be intrigued to see if this is something more people want to see. All right, that's all for today. I'll see you next time. Bye. Warehouse area. What's up? Yeah? Okay.